Well, either way, you noticed,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's what it is. It's noticing. When two people come together, they should each have in their mind a question, and that would be, what are my possibilities with this other person? On what level are they willing to rise to? Is it possible to have you know, a wonderful experience with them? Truly wonderful, meaning where it's a wonder, where you're awed, where you know that you were in the right place at the right time. So, with that clarity to begin to work with, allow your mind to clear. Allow your over identification to dissolve away. You're the watcher, nothing more. For now. Until you watch everything that's going on and are aware of it. You're really not the guy in control, are you? You're the guy that's having an effect created on him. And that's not what you're here to do. You're here to admire, not be an effect, or not have an effect pushed on you, meaning something that's other than exactly the way that it is. What you want instead is to observe true brilliance and true magnificence. To be able to have as a normal part of your life interactions with extraordinarily brilliant consciousnesses. One where you inspire each other. And if that's not what you're having with others, then you need to look within and experience that, or those aspects of yourself that can't imagine how they could experience true wonder. We'll let those guys go to the first of the line. Those that are most trapped, most lost, most disabled. Very much like myself. So in this, disabled state that we are, that's when our number comes up. We get a chance to start over, to be born anew, man and woman. And live a life where we're aware and awakened. I'm going to call my friend Spike here. We're going to have a conversation about something and let him suggest what it is.
Hi, David. Spike is currently unavailable.
Spike is on his way. I guess I'll let him call me. Hello, Spike.
Hey, man, sorry about that. I was just carrying a cup of tea upstairs.
Not a problem. While you were doing that, I was being reminded by your higher self that I had some more things to clear out because you were ready for a really interesting conversation.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah. So anytime there's a seemingly something that's not quite right, it's a signal to look within our experience of ourselves and realize that we've dropped a few notches in consciousness, and it's for us to take the time to awaken a little bit more so that we can be here for others the way that we came to be.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's sage advice and a grand statement. So thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. But what would you? I'd either like you to say what you'd like us to talk about, me to talk about, or if there's anything that you've had a puzzling question over that you'd like answered. So any direction you want to start, and then it'll end up with me trying to monopolize the conversation and do a guided meditation.
Well, you know what I mean, that's a great premise and a great way to start. I guess a couple things that I would say. I mean, one, my preference I think would be for you to kind of guide it and direct it. One, because you probably know better than I, and on top of that, you probably have more insight to where to go and what I need versus what my conscious mind might share.
Okay, well then in that light, you've both set the tone and intention and shown me what it is that you really want. So perfect. Well said. And so,
is it okay if I take notes?
Yeah, I'm recording it, and but it's okay if you turn your recorder on or take notes, whatever. I'd prefer that you not actively utilize your mind in trying to put down concepts because they might come too fast. Just rest assured it's being recorded, and I'll get you a copy.
Beautiful, thank you.
Okay. That being said, you knowing me and my knowing you as we do, we have a pretty good way to predict each other and what we're going to say and what we're going to do and how we're going to behave ourselves. And so if we stay on that level, then the best that we can have is an enjoyable conversation where we truly appreciate each other. And as nice as that is, we're reaching for more than that tonight. So I will speak, and then what I want you to do is to allow what moved those words into expression to merge with you, to embrace you, and for you to know what it is to be embraced by that which is free. So that you can know what it is to experience yourself the same way on all layers and levels. Okay, so here we go. Spike, as you are, as the man Spike humor, the difficulty with self-improvement, if you want to make a quantum shift or a transformational leap, is that we feel like we have to do it as us. And we don't know how to be anything other than us. And we don't know what it is truly to have a transcendent experience. Or at least we don't know how to create it. And so what we have to do is we have to say, this is a time where we're making an assessment of our own consciousness, where we're saying to ourselves, yeah, I don't know, and I should. I should move here in a state of knowing, in a condition of full awareness, with a movement of grace and wisdom. That should be my baseline. And if I'm less than that, then it's not for me to figure my way out of it. It's for me to surrender my way out of it to that which is truly free and blesses us and the rest of the universe with that same state of freedom if we choose to open and embody it and understand it and live it as ourselves. So so that part of yourself where you say, hey, I need some help. Well, the truth is that you do need some help, and so do I. And so in admitting that, we're embodying a higher level of truth. We're not the guys pretending that we have it all figured out. We're saying, God, I need some help. Whether or not there's a God, is another discussion. But if we need help, then we need help. And help comes from surrendering the identity to an experience of awakening, to an experience of awareness in an enlightened and wise experience of ourselves. So the truth that we think is true of us, that we experience ourselves to be day to day, is less by an infinite degree than what is actually true about us. The identity and the personality and the beingness that we are here is transitory and temporary. It seems to be permanent because it always feels like us, and it's uncomfortable to whatever degree it is for each one of us. And we have a tendency to either judge ourselves harshly or to praise ourselves undeservedly. And so both of them are just as entrapping as the other. And if any one has the edge, it's being proud of your accomplishments. Because in that, you don't examine them. You don't examine the consciousness that's contained therein, and you find a level of approval and support from others that is better than most, and it feels good. And we say feels like a safe place to be, where I've got I've got people admiring and supporting me here. But look at the consciousness where that comes from. That's a consciousness that's in a state of not knowing its own truth, not knowing its own freedom, not knowing its own power and awareness, and certainly not experiencing the state of grace and wisdom as its experience of self. And that is what is true of you beyond the moment. So for that to be true in the moment, for that to be your experience in the now, then you have to allow the story of you to shatter, and the truth of you universally, eternally, to seep in every pore, merge with all subtle bodies and awaken as you in your experience of yourself. You in a condition of awakening, in a experience of moving into transcendent, a transcendent experience of yourself. So in that desire to have a transcendent experience of yourself, replace the doubt and the faith and the knowing that you haven't met anybody who's even had the experience that you're asking for yourselves. So how could that ever possibly be real for you? Only by admitting that it's been so unreal for you that you've resulted in the personality, the being, the body, the man, the life that you are, and who you're living here as. The complete story of you is made up by yourself and made up by others through your agreements with others as to what's real, and what's true, and what's right, and what's wrong. Well, if everybody you made those agreements with was disabled to a great degree and unconscious, unquestionably, and in full experience of a universal freedom of consciousness for itself, no. So that doesn't get an input into creating your experience of who you are. The only thing that gets to create the experience of who you are from now on is the truth that sets you free. And that the truth of you is the truth of eternity, the truth of universality, the truth of grace and love, unconditional. And it's not something that you aspire to. It's something that happens as your experience of yourself when you when you take a break of trying to force your way through life. Force your way through the unconsciousness that you are experiencing as yourself. No, you've got to love who and what you are in your most disabled state. And you have to admit that your experience is exactly what it is. That your experience of you is exactly what you're experiencing. There's nothing more to it than what you're aware of until you become aware of more. And as you become aware of more and more and more of you, the truth of your reality shifts from a contextual truth to a transcendent one in which your experience of yourself at that quantum awakened level results in the identity of you transcending experience of self and an awakening as the eternal truth, so that your experience of your body, your manhood, your member of the human race, that's what gets to experience the shift. So yes, you get what you want here, but what you want here has to continuously change for more of that. When you choose for more awareness, more consciousness, more grace, more truth in your experience of self, then you can begin to see what the next quantum step is for yourself. And that's what you want to focus your attention on once you've taken responsibility for the limited you, for the one that's not free, the one that's in fear and suffering, even though you're succeeding here. It's still not right yet for you. So experience the you that's not quite right by a long way. And I'm doing the same for myself. And for me, it's a difficult and painful experience, but it's one that I'm willing to have so that I can be free of it, so that it's a moment in time that has passed, instead of one that moves through every moment of time and disables me on nearly every level of physicality and consciousness. So for me, it's got to go. And the only way it's going to go is for me to love it to death, to wish to experience it so intimately that it can't maintain the structure of itself at that level of perception and consciousness. Lies can't persist in the light of universal truth. They all dissolve away because the consciousness under the unconsciousness sees the light of truth and chooses to awaken from where it is, regardless of how dense and dark. When you've had enough of the limitations of consciousness that we've all subjected ourselves to, then you love yourself into submission. And when you submit to yourself, to the eternal you, then and put your focus on that. a split focus, actually, on your experience of yourself as the divine, and your experience of yourself as you are temporally here, physically, mentally, spiritually, the human. Experience heaven and hell, so to speak, man and God at the same time. And what happens in that embrace, in that shared split, it's like you're standing between heaven and hell, and you're the doorway or gate in between. And as that, when the lie experiences true brilliance, a true consciousness of true freedom, it can't maintain its sense of self anymore. You won't be able to maintain the spike that's not eternal. That'll dissolve away because that was all manufactured, it was all created. It wasn't real, it wasn't true, and it wasn't really you. The essence of you is beyond magnificent. But when the consciousness that is experiencing yourself to be less than that simply says, okay, I'm going to put all of my awareness on this experience of less than that until it submits and dissolves and transcends its experience of itself as that. You put enough consciousness, enough light into your experience of darkness until the structure of that reality can't be maintained anymore. And then you're free as yourself. While you're still alive, while you're still human, you don't have to die and wait and see what happens afterwards. If anything, who knows? But if you truly want to know how to know while you're here and while you're you have to allow the you that you are to be exposed to the truth that sets it free and dissolves all the lies of your identity, of your creation, of your association with yourself and with others. It's the truth of you that sets you free, and it's the lie of the temporal you, as real as you are. Experience it divinely, and you'll be free of it, and it will be free of you, because you'll both have transcended into an experience that's so much more real and true and pleasant for you. There, so now we're finally fully merged with our bodies, so just enjoy that experience. Notice how everything that's binding and limiting the body is dissolving and flowing and fading and going away to some place that it really wants to, because something wonderful is going to happen there. And your inner conflicts are resolved, and you're at harmony with yourself. And as you open into experiencing that experience of self-harmonization, then you know that things are going to be okay for a while. Be really okay. Beyond that, who knows? But you'll know what the shaman and the mystic and the alchemist and the holy man all wanted to know. How to experience a level of truth that sets them free, that moves them into a state of knowing from not knowing, or at least knowing how to know, which means looking infinitely at every experience of limitation until your consciousness in limitation is free. And then you can move in limitation as the universal truth of yourself. One that just has a way with words and movements and actions that move the reality around you into its own perception of harmony and grace. One that inspires a remembrance and a reawakening of each consciousness that's around us. That way, we can deal with each other on a completely new level. A level where we create freely and express ourselves, as magnificently as we can. And we move, in an ever more infinitely variable, wise, and wonderful ways of expanding, our consciousness, our beingness, our awareness, our ability. We allow ourselves to experience actual transformation. And you can only do that by intimately knowing the limitation first. So know yourself. Know what it is to be you. Experience that intimately. And as you do that, your experience of yourself will get better and better, because the lies will drift away. They'll no longer be a part of the structure of the story and the identity and the experience of being you. So now that we've defined the territory, so to speak, notice that, what I said was logical, and what you know is actually real and true if you just do it. So do it in each moment until freedom becomes you. Experience the limitation until freedom is the result, opening more and more and more into experiencing whatever there is in your life. And in each moment you can make better choices. You don't have to keep experiencing the same bad things. You can experience them once and be done with it. If you change, if you let the lie of you see the light of truth. And that's an awesome thing to experience. A difficult one, but an awesome one. When you're moving from the dark into the light, when the light begins to love the dark, and the dark begins to love the light, and they realize that the perfect dance of creation is only possible with both sides. Now, it can degenerate in unconsciousness into pure destruction, but that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is universal truth, universal awareness and understanding, universal knowing, and an ability to know whatever it is that we're experiencing intimately. So if we're light and the other's dark, then we know the darkness intimately. And if we're dark and the other is light, then we know the light intimately. And in that mutual experience, there grows an appreciation for the divine glory of it all. And then we both choose for the better. We choose to be free instead of to fight. We choose grace instead of judgment. We choose freedom for our enemies and ourselves, of course. If your enemy is so free that he awakens and enlightens and transcends and self-realizes and embodies universal truth, on the one hand, it's observable that that never happens, but on the other hand, if it did, it would be good for you. It would be grand. Because you do that much better and more for yourself, as your enemy did for themselves. It's not going to be a winning or losing computation. It's going to be the experience of what is universally real. And in your experience of that, what is universally real changes. It becomes transcendent. It shifts frequencies from polarities and competition and winning, losing. It moves from there into a level of awareness that's so competent that it doesn't need to compete, doesn't want to. It's just there to experience what there is here, to see it absolutely truly. As we see the truth of our universal knowing within the limitation of a temporal being here, I can't help but be inspired by that. Not to pretend to be the same as the universal, but to remember that the universal is also them. And by remember, I mean a coming together of all the parts into a whole that has been a puzzle to create. But it's not. It just can't be done from lower consciousness. The only thing lower consciousness can do is to focus on itself until the lies about that being true dissolve. And, that's all pretty definitively spoken, but only because there appears to be something that works in that actually creates that result. And so is there something better? I sure hope so, but is it workable? It sure seems like it. I wish it worked better. But it does work. So can it happen all at once? Yeah, it probably can. Do I know how? I absolutely don't. But what I do know is that I know how to know. I'm a little slow, but I'm competent on this subject and on this path. And that's only because I chose to look at it, chose to experience it, with the desire to truly understand it. And for anybody that wants to be free, they're going to have to do the same thing. Not that I'm an example of being free, because I'm not. I'm trapped, just like everyone else, but it's getting better. The trap is getting better. The trap is not able to perpetuate itself cleanly and clearly in each new moment. It becomes less and less of a trap and more of an interesting experience. So in your life, let's take a good look at that. There's all those things that you have to do that you know you have to do, and you're going to do those because you have to. That doesn't change the fact that you're here to awaken and transcend. When you experience your obligations and your commitments and your limitations and your interactions here divinely, that's what changes you into an experience of a truth that is free for you. One where you're no longer suffering. One where your greatest desire is to celebrate the fact that you're you and that you're here, and that I'm me and that I'm here, and that we experience each other and those around us the way that we do, because things keep getting better. Just let that be the default setting. No matter how trapped you are, things keep getting better. You appreciate that. You're grateful. And you understand that the more that you appreciate it, the more that you, your experience of then your experience of the discomfort of whatever it is that you don't like about yourself or about life or about others that's going to change. It's going to change until you can't help like being you and love interacting with others. So it's that moment by moment surrender to the truth that actually is in the process of setting you free, according to how much you open to it, how much you're willing to allow it to be you, to be true, to be your experience of what's actually real. Because it is what is actually real. What's not real is a story that was made up by people who didn't know who they were or what the truth actually is of themselves, let alone this reality. So let all that fade away, all of the false knowledge, all of the fake knowing. Realize that nobody has known who they were, what they were, why they were here as they are. And as you feel that resonate within yourself, you become freer. As soon as you realize that nobody knows what's real and true, you can quit, you can relax, you can quit trying, because everybody failed, so you don't even need to try anymore. You can just be comfortable being whatever it is that you are here. But as you let go of the stress of having to perform something you don't know how to do, and you relax into the experience of something that's really comfortable, can you let yourself go into an experience of true comfort? To be comforted within your experience of self by yourself and by your experience of others, and by your experience of the reality of being on earth as you are. Can you open to the experience of being comforted by that? Being supported by that? And then you'll begin to experience a transcendent experience of yourself, one that transcends who and what you've been here, and replaces it with what you could have been, what you intended to be, what you should have been. The actualized you, the enlightened you, the magnificent you, the one that would have chosen differently. It's not someone else, it's not something else, it's the universal truth of you. It's not the temporal experience of yourself. It's the universal one, the eternal one, the actual one, the actual you. And when you hide yourself into a story, into a fabrication that you know is a fabrication, and you own that fabrication as your identity, as your reality, as the totality of who you are and what your truth is, then how much change are you capable of? The story's already been written. It has a beginning and an end. And it has the now as your experience of what it is to be that story. The story of you isn't supposed to be written by others. It's not even supposed to be written by yourself. It's supposed to be a moment by moment shifting experience. What would it be like if you believe in God? What would it be like for God to awaken as you? And if you don't believe in God, what would it be like if you awakened as a consciousness that was the most able one that had ever existed, the most aware, the most enlightened, the most brilliant, the highest IQ, the most unbelievable intuitions, your ability to sense reality where you're the guy that knows more than anybody. Doesn't matter what your current beingness is. You can be a worshiper of God or you can be an enemy. It doesn't matter. What matters is, are you experiencing that story of yourself deeply enough so that it's no longer defining and limiting your experience of yourself? That's a nice way to put it for me to understand it and experience a shift. And when I pause in these, it's because I have to pay attention for a minute and experience a shift in whatever, as a result of whatever it is that I'm saying, so that I can reorient, from that new knowledge and awareness. So, what have you got left that you need to have, or to see, or to know, or to be, for you to be, do, and have what you want? Yeah, you don't even have to speak it. All you have to do is look at it. I'm looking at it too. As you look at it and I look at it, look at how it dissipates. Feel how it's moving into a flow of freedom and grace. When every movement of yours is one of grace, then you're what you came here to be. The truth of eternity. The light and the darkness and the light. The yin and the yang, the beginning and the end, and the experience in the middle of the eternal knowing, the temporal, as its experience of itself here, and vice versa. Yeah, like that. Yeah, you just let it happen. It's actually really easy. No matter how difficult it seems, it's truly nothing. There's no real rules about it even. It's just freedom and knowing, and a celebration of all identities, all beings, all identities. It's either the love of God or or what happens when you get the very, very best intelligence, whatever that combination of ayahuasca and peyote and marijuana and LSD and DMT and all of the others put together, if they could all come together and each give their part and their point of view and their wish for you to be more, know more, do more, have more, it would simply point in this same direction. Experience you until this experience of you is, truly magnificent. Don't hold back in any way from your experience of anything that is uncomfortable about yourself. Anything that is unconscious, anything that seems to be in the dark, anything that's lost in the light. Because when the dark is wrong, so is the right. It's not I'm right and you're wrong, ever. It's both right or both wrong. That's how it goes here. If you fall in consciousness and you take an identity that was created for you by others, then that is never going to be the experience of truth and freedom that you yearn for, the truth of yourself that you came here to be. So good and bad, right and wrong. What came before can't mean anything if you want the truth of yourself to set you free. The truth of yourself has to be the causative force of transformation. It has to be what frees you from the lies, both the dark ones and the light ones. I've got a lot to look at and experience within my experience of myself, because I am so far from freedom that it's a bad joke for me to even be talking like this. And so I have to get the punchline in that joke somehow and let it go. You are, in fact, absolutely the one that is responsible for your life. Because in each moment of time, your attention is where you focused it. Your body is where you placed it. Your words, if you're speaking them, are what you said. Or if they're not, if you're not speaking, then they're not saying anything that could have been said instead. So if your choice is what puts you and fixes you in time and space, establishes your connections, and defines who you are, then own that so you can be free within that experience. Own the fact that your life is your creation and nobody else's. Everything that you took on from others, you did so willingly. There's nothing that's requiring you to hold on to any of it. Trapped consciousness always wants to be free, and free consciousness always grants whatever blessing a person's willing to receive that will enable them to in a greater manner to embody their own truth. And that's what we're looking for. That knowing how to open ourselves into the experience of a greater and greater level of truth until we experience freedom as the experience of ourselves. Freedom in a way that is a blessing to ourselves, and the actions that we take in that freedom also bless others. We find a pathway that is beneficial to us all. And as we do that, then we have a community created as a result of our own responsibility to ourselves. And that's what humanity is ready to move into. And it doesn't matter where you are in that line, if there is a line. Let's just say that it doesn't matter that you're actually making the choice in this moment. Unless you make that choice, then it matters a great deal, because your reality will change profoundly. And you'll become the you that you came here to be. Not the one that is a compilation of pretense and lies and roles and stories, but the one that is beyond pretense, beyond roles, beyond stories. And you're actually just yourself all the time. Just exactly what you are when you're universally realized. You're real here as that, as you. The body, the personality, as a universal being of freedom. Open up to that embrace and receive it and embrace it back. You're not creating a debt or an obligation in any way for yourself. You're accepting a blessing. one that doesn't have to be paid back, one that was freely given, no obligations. Just all there is attached to that is a kind of a delighted anticipation of what you're going to do with that when you open into and experience your own light and truth and freedom yourself. And that's not too much of a burden to take with that kind of a blessing. So open and receive what you've asked for as you experience yourself in a temporal way, transcendently. Allow for the moment of awakening to actually be right now. If you experience awakening right now, what changes within you? What changes on the outside? And as you feel what those changes are, just don't stop them, let them happen. Allow yourself to be changed by the experience of a universal realization. Allow that to shift the experience of who you are. And if the change needed seems to be infinite, it's really not. It is, but it's not. Infinite isn't difficult. Saying yes to it is what's difficult. Because we don't know where that path takes us. We have no predictability, even for ourselves. Except for the fact that we know that it's going to get better and better in each moment, that that's real for us. When you catch yourself going back into an intention to change things mode, to be the one that's moving the energy around and creating change, that's a self-destructive path, because we don't know what else we're doing when we're doing that. We don't know what else we're shifting. We don't know what else we're bringing into manifestation. If you try to change through energy and through force and through effort, then you get the kind of change that is predictable here. But if you change entirely through self-awareness, then there's no limitation as to what can happen after that. It's actually by far the fastest way to self-improvement. Because without a clarity of knowing and being and purpose here, then how can we know in any one moment what action we should take? We're unconscious, but behind the wheel of the control of our lives, and you're too drunk to be driving that when you're in that state of consciousness. You're too drunk on this reality as being what's primary for you. So let this reality fade just a little bit and open up some space where you can be aware of what gives place for this reality. What consciousness is there that holds this entire reality within its experience of itself? Expand out and experience the answers to those questions within your experience of yourself. then you'll be a lot closer to the truth of you than you were before we started. Okay, so now I have to look and see if there's anything else that needs to be said in order for there to be an understanding that is workable for you and for me. You know, I'm not doing this in a condescending way. I'm just the one that seems to like saying these things. So so don't accept, anything other than, if you ridge on something, if something, rubs you the wrong way, again, dive into that experience of that and say, interesting that I'm having this experience. What's this about? Why is this being imposed on my consciousness? Why are these emotions coming up and demanding that I accept or reject or judge something here? And you sit in that until all those fragments of personalities and voices dissolve away. And just more aspects of a fragmented consciousness that went unconscious. All you have to do is know that you're experiencing yourself divinely in the midst of your experience of being in hell, as it were, in terms of a reality created based upon infinite numbers of stories, descriptions, philosophies, religions, all competing for the title of truth. Each claiming it as their own and judging every other one as lacking, either to a greater or lesser degree. But when we don't know and we claim the truth as our own, and the knowing is by ourselves is that which is the determining factor on what's real and what's true for everyone. Then you can do your best to control all of the other unconscious consciousnesses. But is that a game that you really want to play? I would think that you'd rather succeed all the way and experience the possible you, the predicted you, the purposeful, the one that came with a purpose to offer the option of freedom, awareness, realization, to be an example of what it is that human consciousness can be. And to do it in a manner that is kind of irresistible, fun, wise, beautiful. And so as you move into a willingness to experience yourself that way, then the things that were on your list of, oh, I got to do this and I got to handle that and I don't know how to do it, but I really wish this wasn't this way. Those things, exactly those things that are bothering you are what's resolved. So, I don't know, I probably said it as many new ways as I need to this time. So what do you have to say?
Well, it's a lot to process.
It is.
I'm gonna listen to it again if I can on a more conscious level because I just kind of relaxed and kind of let myself kind of trance out into it. But I did write down about 30 questions, and they're all how questions, and they're more rhetorical than they are specific questions, but they're broad questions in the sense that how can I do this and be that and those types of things. So they're not really yes or no or like linear questions. They're more abstract.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Sure does. Well, so was there anything? So what's your? I know that you have a pretty good idea of what sort of self-help stuff there is out there. What do you think ought to be done with this type of information?
I didn't look at it from a meta level.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense of like trying to looking down and see the structure. I just really kind of, trying to just flow with the experience of it.
That's
so I didn't really.
Yes, I understand that, and that's what you're supposed to do. Just as I'm kind of coming back to, okay, turn off the lights, brush my teeth, go to bed, level of stuff.
No, and I'm sure, as I process it tonight when I go to sleep, and as I listen to it again, if you can, if you send it over tomorrow or whatever, I'm sure I'll go meditate to it, and I'll do, the thing we all do, right? The comparative analysis or the evaluation of anything that, this is that because it's similar to this, right? But I intentionally didn't do that.
What's funny is that as great as the recordings sometimes are, it always seems to be something different than what the experience was. It always seems to be something more earthy,
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder about that sometimes because I often wonder if anything that I actually said was actually recorded. It seems like it all gets twisted a couple of notches until it's saying something else.
Yeah, and I can tell you, kind of the overarching or the pervasive thing for me was that, I have a tendency sometimes when, I'm trying to create things, when I say create, I mean, it's more of a force than it is, an expression of creativity. I'm trying to create things, I'm trying to make things happen in a certain way.
Yep.
But when I do that, I have a tendency to be very, very finite, right? So I kind of chisel down or,
right.
Or kind of chunk down. And the thing that came up for me through this is that, that as I'm trying to create things, it's more an allowance, but it's also much more expansive than it is contracting.
Exactly.
So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes.
But okay.
Yeah, exactly. I think you got a really good handle on what I said, and it wouldn't have been so expansive unless you were going to hear it. So at any rate, this is what I like to do, and looking to see if there's a way that this can be something more.
Well, it is, David. I mean, just I'm kind of coming back into my own momentary reality. Obviously there is. I mean, because it's not very easy for me to not go meta to something. I mean, like when I was doing all my hypnosis training, when I was doing all my NLP training and all those things that I was doing, even though I was experiencing it, I was always meta to it, right? So I was going through it, but I was always observing what was happening while I was going through it. So
sure,
it's not an easy thing for me to do, and it doesn't happen often where I can actually let go of that evaluative process. Right?
Sure.
So to me, I mean, that's something significant. And I'm just saying for me personally, and I suspect there's probably a like, when they say, okay, close your eyes, go to sleep, the Santa Claus is coming, and you go to sleep with one eye open. And, really surrendering to the experience, you're kind of, waiting to see, so that you can kind of evaluate what's going on. So for me, I'm telling you, it's just not something that happens normally, and it certainly isn't something that happens naturally. And so to me, that was something that was very distinct.
Yeah, because once you can have an awareness in there that your observation of your experience of yourself is that you're experiencing what you want to transcend. It's the story of you. It was what was described of you that wasn't a very good reflection of the truth, and so there was a miscommunication, or intentional or unintentional, but the input that this reality has in defining and creating our experience of who we are, that's what has to go. And it feels like us, we know it's us, and yet it's not. It's a role, it's a play, a story that we're living. And as we look at it and see that as we look at it, it dissolves and changes, and our experience of ourself becomes cleaner when those limitations fall away, then we come to the realization of knowing that those limitations, that story, that sense of self is not real. It's not. It will change, and so since it's changeable by observation, then it's something that was created and not the actual thing itself.
Well, for me, David, and these are the first two things that popped in my mind. And I intentionally wasn't taking notes because I didn't want to go in. I was just, kind of like writing down questions as they came up. But like the thing you started off with, and I think if you're listening to the recording, you'll hear in the first minute or two where you were talking about basically, the surrender. Right? And so the two things came up to me, and there's more around this. I have to, kind of process it in my mind, and I'll write it out in the morning. But it's like, how can you find freedom in surrender, and how can you surrender to the possibility of freedom, right? And so there's a dichotomy there, right? That
it's a paradox.
It is, and so I know there's another perspective of that, because I always have things in threes in my head, and I only came up with two because I didn't want to spiral down just to that one thought. But I know there's another component to that equation, right?
And it's that you actually awaken when you look to experience both sides at the same time, and it's the part that's trapped, the part that's the story and the lie, is what bubbles off basically and goes away, and what's left is clarity of self.
Yeah, and David, this may be too far outside the scope of what we just did, but to me, I think the challenge with myself, and I think the challenge for most people in life is that we see things as a dichotomy. We see things as a binary choice, right? It's black or white, it's on or off, it's this or that, left or right, and my personal belief, my personal philosophy, and this way my mind thinks, and it's what makes sense to me in most things, is that, if you only have one thing, you don't really have a choice. If you have two, you have a dilemma, right? You really need to have a third perspective, or a third option, in there in order to have any degree of freedom in the thing, right? So it's kind of like the first person, second person, third person kind of thing, and that's the thing that I know I get caught up in, and when I feel that I only have a choice between this and that, I don't feel that I have freedom, and I don't feel that I actually have a choice. And something that kind of came up throughout this is that because you were sharing possibilities without directing a binary choice, right? Mm-hmm. And I think when I look at a lot of things from a personal growth standpoint, personal development standpoint, advice, business, politics, whatever it is, people are saying, okay, well, you can have this, or you can have that. You can do this, or you can do that. You can be this way, or you can be that way. And one of the things with this, and it's one of the reasons why might allow me to kind of go with the processes that I didn't feel like I was boxed into a choice between one or the other.
Oh.
Right? It was more of an invitation than a directive.
Yeah, that's great feedback. I appreciate that. And I think it's accurate as well. As a collective, humanity, we, have a bunch of things that we've agreed on. What physical limitations there are and what mental limitations are and what limitations in terms of things in the miraculous, what can happen there. And, so the bottom line is we give very little freedom to ourselves or to others here. And it's something that has to change first in yourself. You have to give yourself the complete freedom that comes from knowing that you're the one that's absolutely responsible. And as that, you're the only one that can clean things up. And the only way that you can clean it up is to completely surrender to the experience of what you've created and experience it without resistance or reaction or agreeing with it. It's the experience of the actuality of what it is to be you until it changes for the better. And so it's a pretty simple process, but a pretty difficult one to focus on, apparently.
Well, it is, but you just completed a thought for me that I had, and I couldn't articulate the first components of it. There's you were talking about transcendence, right? So prior to transcendence, to me, there's an ascendance, right? But I couldn't figure out the two components below that. And so there's a resistance, then there's an acceptance, and then there's an ascendance, and then there's a transcendence. But without having a resistance, you wouldn't know what it is, and without having an acceptance, you couldn't go beyond it.
Yeah.
And so once you can ascend that, then you can transcend the entire circumstance. And that was the first two components of those I couldn't articulate in my mind until you just shared that example.
Oh, nice.
So
nice.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm glad there's somebody smart enough as you to, catch those things.
I don't know if I caught it. Maybe just landed on it.
Well, either way, you noticed.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's noticing. Yeah, it's a funny thing. I found out this morning that I actually have cancer, and I'm strangely disappointed that my wife is pushing me to have it clipped out, and so I've got some sort of pride to look at that. This will never be a big deal for me because I can confront it and I can deal with it. And yet, is there enough time? Is a day enough for me to focus on this so that when they take a look on Friday, there's nothing to see? I mean, that's a pretty tall order, Not saying that it's a goal, but there's some intention and desire that I have to prove that I can heal. Now, that's obviously coming from a low level of consciousness, so I've got to let that go. Because if I feel like I have to prove something, then I'm saying that I'm incapable of bringing somebody else over to my point of view for effective communication. So if that's the consciousness that I'm at, where I can't do that, then I am in the state that I'm pretending that I'm not, of being disabled. So we'll do as much responsibly as we can as I can in every area of my life, business and personal. we'll look to keep making better choices.